Many people say that the history being taught to us might be wrong. According to Graham Hancock, a writer who has spent more than 3 decades searching for evidence, it's possible that there was a lost civilization that was even more advanced than we think. And he has shown a lot of evidence that proves what he says is true. From the mystery of Atlantis to ancient maps like the Piri Reis map, which shows Antarctica as a land with forests and no ice, and also places like Göbekli Tepe, which is even older than Stonehenge. All of these are hints that humanity really has a much deeper history. And the biggest question here is, if there really were advanced societies in ancient times, where are their memories now? And according to Hancock, maybe this knowledge or these cities were lost, not because they disappeared, but because they might have been buried by ice, by the sea, or by time. In this video, we will try to look into the evidence that Hancock has found. These are proofs that open up the possibility that there really was an ancient civilization that existed on Earth before us humans. But before we start, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. This is a big help for us content creators. Thank you very much, and now let's begin. Atlantis, the lost civilization. This is one of the most famous and most controversial stories of ancient times. The legend of Atlantis was first written by the Greek philosopher Plato, who said that this kingdom was founded by the gods themselves, first by Poseidon, and named after Atlas. According to his description, Atlantis was a wealthy land full of large cities, advanced agriculture, and powerful ships. But as their power grew, their character also changed. The once orderly and humane way of life was replaced by greed and arrogance. Instead of using their intelligence and strength for good, they used them for evil. And according to Plato's story, punishment came. A great disaster of earthquakes, fire, and floods struck them in just one day and one night. In an instant, the entire civilization sank into the sea and disappeared without a trace. For most historians, Atlantis is nothing more than a legend. Anyone who believes in it is often called a fraud. According to the traditional view of archaeology, human development was slow and gradual, with no sudden appearance of an advanced civilization. And this is where Graham Hancock comes in, a writer and researcher who has been investigating the possibility of a lost civilization for more than 3 decades. According to Hancock, the sudden emergence of great structures and technologies in ancient times cannot be explained by hunter-gatherers alone. He believes that there was a transfer of technology, that there really was an earlier civilization. He called it the antediluvian civilization, a society that existed before the great floods of the world. Plato's timeline is also important. He also said that Atlantis was destroyed 9,000 years. Before the time of Solon, Solon was a Greek legislator who lived around 600 BCE. When translated to modern times, this is equivalent to 11,600 years ago. And surprisingly, this exactly matches the period when scientists say there was a major climate change and sea level rise after the younger Dryas. For Hancock, this is not just a simple coincidence. It is a hint that Plato's story might contain some real history. He also adds that many ancient traditions, texts, and sacred scriptures from different cultures tell stories of a truly extraordinary disaster and destruction or annihilation. So while Atlantis remains a legend for most people, Graham Hancock insists that there is enough evidence to reopen the question. Could there really have been an earlier advanced civilization that disappeared into the sea and is now forgotten by history? The Younger Dryas Impact Event. At first, scientists thought that the world developed slowly. The climate gradually warmed after the Ice Age, and only then did humans begin to farm and build shelters. But a great mystery disrupted this timeline. The sudden arrival of the Younger Dryas, a period of intense cold that began around 12,800 years ago. According to archaeologists, the warming should have continued back then, but for some unexplained reason, the temperature suddenly dropped. It wasn't just cold, it was like an instant return to the Ice Age. and as a result it caused a massive die-off of animals, including many large creatures called megafauna, like mammoths and mastodons. The question is, what caused it? This is where the so-called cosmic impact theory comes in. In 2007, a group of scientists published a groundbreaking study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. According to them, there is clear evidence of an extraterrestrial impact. They found a thin layer of ash and soot in the ground. This is known as the black mat and is found in various locations worldwide. In this layer, they found unusual materials such as nanodiamonds, shock-formed crystals, and carbon spheres that can only be formed with extremely high heat and energy. Just like the explosion of a comet or asteroid, the data shows that it's possible. A giant comet entered the atmosphere and broke apart into many pieces, hitting large areas of ice in North America and Europe. The impact caused instant flooding, fires, and massive disruption to the climate. The most terrifying thing is that the date of this disaster almost matches what Plato said about the sinking of Atlantis 11,600 years ago. That's why many believe that what Plato called a legend might actually be a memory of a real event. For more than a decade, research has continued. In 2014, evidence was published in the Journal of Geology about the discovery of even more nanodiamonds on 3 continents. In 2015, another study came out stating that it was not possible for these markers to have formed gradually. This happened suddenly, within just 1 day and 1 night, exactly as Plato described the destruction of Atlantis. To this day, the puzzle is still incomplete. The problem is, because the ice was so thick back then, it's hard to find the craters left by the impact. But despite this, the evidence gathered from Mexico, Greenland, Syria, and other places clearly shows that a cosmic catastrophe struck the world and completely changed the course of history. Göbekli Tepe, the oldest megalithic temple, one of the greatest mysteries in history, is Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a place that completely changed our understanding of when civilization began. According to archaeologists, this place was built more than 11,600 years ago. This means it is 7,000 years older than Stonehenge and 6,000 years older than any megalithic temple. The giant stones and carvings here show that there were people back then who knew architecture and planning, even though that time is considered the Stone Age. Professor Klaus Schmidt, the archaeologist who led the excavation, discovered 3 surprising things about this place. First, it wasn't simply buried by nature. After almost 1,000 years of use, the entire site was deliberately buried by people, layer by layer of soil and stone, as if they wanted to hide it from the next generation. Second, because it was not disturbed by other civilizations, the age of the site is clear and exact. And the scans show that what we see now as circular stone pillars are just a small part of the entire complex. There are still hundreds of large pillars buried underneath, just waiting to be uncovered again. Third, the carvings on the pillars, animals, symbols, and other markings seem to tell the story of a world lost to history. Some say this could be a memory of a cataclysmic event that wiped out an earlier civilization. Most surprising of all, it appears that Göbekli Tepe is not just a temple. It played a major role in the transition of people from being nomadic hunter-gatherers to learning agriculture. Many experts believe that this is where knowledge about farming began to spread. If this is true, Göbekli Tepe is not just a temple, but also a source of civilization. At present, it is considered the largest megalithic site in the world. And with every new discovery here, the possibility grows stronger that Graham Hancock might be right, that there was a lost civilization that existed before all the history we know. Antarctica in the Eocene epoch. When we hear the word Antarctica, most people immediately think of a very cold and almost lifeless place. But did you know that millions of years ago this continent was not yet covered by thick ice? During the so-called Eocene epoch, about 56 to 34 million years ago, Antarctica was a green land full of forests, plants, and various kinds of animals. According to the fossils that were found, there were beech trees, ferns, and conifers that grew there. That means there was a warmer climate and a more pleasant environment back then. In the surrounding seas, there was also an abundance of different kinds of animals and marine life. It was not yet the frozen desert that we know today. The reason why the climate of Antarctica gradually changed was its separation from the supercontinent Gondwana. As the continent moved toward the southernmost part of the world, the flow of the oceans also changed, and the Antarctic circumpolar current gradually began to form. Because of this, the warm flow of water to the continent was cut off and widespread cooling began, bringing ice across all of Antarctica. But the story doesn't end here. Some researchers and history enthusiasts have theories that there may be hidden ancient structures or ancient ruins beneath the thick ice of Antarctica. These raise even bigger questions. Is it possible that there are traces of a lost civilization buried under the ice and still hidden until now? To this day, Antarctica remains a mystery. The discoveries about its past climate remind us how much nature can change our planet. But on the other hand, speculations and possibilities also remain alive that there might be an even older story buried beneath the thick ice. Secrets just waiting to be discovered. The Piri Reis map of 1513, an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis created a unique map. This map became one of the most controversial in history because it shows parts of the world that, according to modern history, people were not supposed to know about at that time. The Piri Reis map shows the very exact coastline of South America, Africa, and especially the mysterious outline of Antarctica, more than 300 years before it was officially discovered by modern explorers in 1820. What's even more puzzling is that the map shows Antarctica without ice, something that would have only been possible thousands of years ago before the thick ice sheets began to form. According to Piri, he didn't just make the map based on observation. His design was actually based on more than 100 much older maps that came from the Library of Alexandria, the famous center of knowledge that was destroyed in the 4th century. If this is true, it means there was an even more ancient civilization with highly advanced knowledge of navigation and cartography, thousands of years before the era of modern explorers. Another surprising detail in the Piri Reis map is the accurate depiction of longitude. According to history books, people only learned how to accurately measure longitude in the 18th century using the chronometer. But why does this map already have the exact measurements more than 200 years before science discovered it? This map also contains coastlines and features that correspond to the Ice Age period, suggesting that the sources of these older maps may have come from an advanced civilization that existed thousands of years ago. For Graham Hancock, the Piri Reis map is one of the strongest pieces of evidence that there was a lost civilization that sailed around the world and made maps at a time when it shouldn't have been possible. And if this is true, it means that our history might be older and more complicated than what is taught in textbooks. Operation High Jump and the Secrets of Antarctica. In the late 1940s, a mission was led by the United States Navy under Admiral Richard E. Byrd. This was called Operation High Jump. According to the official record, its purpose was to conduct training in extreme cold, set up a research base, and experiment with new military equipment in the harsh environment of Antarctica. This was one of the largest expeditions ever conducted on the continent, where thousands of soldiers, ships, and airplanes were sent. But while the documents released by the government are clear, many speculations have also emerged surrounding this mission. Some believe that Operation High Jump was not just a simple training or scientific project. According to conspiracy theories, it may have had a hidden purpose: to discover strange things hidden beneath the thick ice of Antarctica. Speculations include the possibility of underground facilities not made by humans, but by other beings. There are also stories that say Byrd's group reportedly saw strange flying objects while they were on their mission. Some immediately link this to extraterrestrials, as if there are alien bases hidden deep beneath the ice. In addition, some say that Admiral Byrd's own secret records mentioned encounters that were out of the ordinary. Although no solid evidence has been released to the public, such reports have further fueled the imagination of many people. Others say that Antarctica might not just be a natural continent. It might be a place that hides technology or beings that we still do not fully understand. Officially, Operation High Jump is still considered a training mission and exploration project. But for those who believe in a deeper mystery, this is said to be the first hint that the ice of Antarctica hides a much bigger secret. Secrets that could change the way we see history and our place in the universe. The Polynesian expansion versus ancient seafaring. One of the most famous stories of ancient seafaring is the Polynesian expansion. It is estimated to have started about 3,000 to 3,500 years ago, when the Polynesians became known as remarkable seafarers. Through large canoes and their ability to read the stars, waves, and wind directions, they were able to cross vast oceans. One of the greatest proofs of this is their arrival at Easter Island, a very remote island with almost no connection to the continents, but which they successfully reached and inhabited. For most history books, the story of the Polynesians is a symbol of the first long-distance ocean navigation. But according to Graham Hancock, it's possible that they were not the very first. He believes that even before the Polynesians, there were ancient civilizations. And if this is true, cultures may have spread even earlier. And some of his arguments are based on genetics and cultural clues. For example, there is evidence in the Amazon showing that there may have been interaction between ancient people there and distant places, which would have been impossible without the ability to sail the seas. In addition, Hancock believes that ancient seafarers were able to exchange knowledge about agriculture, architecture, and even navigation systems, which cannot be explained if all cultures developed separately. In fact, even the ancient Egyptians had large boats more than 4,500 years ago. Some say that they did not use these for open sea voyages, but according to Hancock, if they had the ability to build such vessels, why wouldn't they be able to cross even greater oceans? This is where the bigger question comes in. If the Polynesians were able to navigate the seas thousands of years ago, is it possible that an even earlier lost civilization sailed and brought knowledge to different parts of the world? This perspective of Hancock opens up the possibility that the history of human civilization. Seafaring did not just begin with the Polynesian expansion, but has a deeper and more ancient origin. Ancient maps and the mystery of one of the greatest mysteries in history are the ancient maps that seem to show knowledge that should not have existed at that time. For example, the Piri Reis map created in 1513 by a Turkish admiral. According to Piri Reis himself, he used more than 100 older maps. What's surprising here is that those maps supposedly came from the Library of Alexandria, which was known as a center of ancient knowledge before it was completely burned down in the 4th century AAD. Maps like these show coastlines that seem to be more accurate during the Ice Age, when sea levels were lower compared to today. This means that knowledge about the world from thousands of years ago was passed down to these maps. One of the most surprising details is the appearance of Antarctica in some old maps, showing it without ice even though it was only discovered by modern explorers in 1820. Not only that, the lines showing longitude are also clearly visible on ancient maps, even though modern history says we only learned this after the invention of the chronometer in the 17th and 18th centuries. If that's the case, how did ancient cartographers manage to record such exact information? According to Graham Hancock, the answer is clear. There was an advanced civilization before the ancient cultures we know. They were the ones who sailed, mapped the world, and passed on their knowledge to future generations. When the Library of Alexandria was destroyed, almost all evidence was lost, and only a few pieces of knowledge remained in the few surviving maps. This is true, which means that ancient people were not just skilled in navigation, they might have been even more advanced than we think. And these maps, according to Hancock, are clues that our past is more complicated and more mysterious than what traditional history teaches. The Bimini Road and the Grand Bahama Banks. In an old map, particularly the Piri Reis map, there is a depiction of what seems to be an island near North America, known as the Grand Bahama Banks. What's unusual here is that the map shows large stone structures that look like roads. When modern researchers visited, they discovered what is called the Bimini Road. This is a series of large stones under the sea, which at first glance seem to have formed naturally. But according to Graham Hancock and others who believe, its arrangement is too straight and systematic to be just a product of nature. For them, this is man-made, an ancient road that is now submerged underwater. The big question is, why is it now under the sea? The answer might be during the Ice Age. When sea levels were lower, part of the Grand Bahama Banks was exposed above the surface. If this is true, it's possible that people back then built this structure and used it as a pathway or ceremonial site before it was completely swallowed by the sea when the water rose. If we connect this to the maps, it further strengthens the idea that there was an advanced civilization thousands of years ago, a culture that knew how to build, navigate, and record the world in ways far beyond what was expected in their time. For Hancock, the Bimini Road is not just a set of stones. It is a clue, a remaining trace of a forgotten civilization that once thrived and then disappeared from history. The Great Library of Alexandria. One of the greatest mysteries in history is the disappearance of the Great Library of Alexandria. It was built in Egypt thousands of years ago and was considered the largest repository of knowledge in ancient times. It was said to house thousands of scrolls and manuscripts from different parts of the world, including maps, records on astronomy, medicine, philosophy, and history. According to some stories, the maps used by Admiral Piri Reis in 1516 to draw his famous world map may have come from older maps that were once kept in the Library of Alexandria. It's surprising because these old maps show the coastlines of continents like South America and even Antarctica, more than 300 years before they were officially discovered by modern explorers. If the ancient maps were based on even older sources of information, it means there was a more advanced civilization before known history. It's possible that survivors of a lost civilization like Atlantis passed on their knowledge, which eventually ended up in the Library of Alexandria. Unfortunately, this library was burned down and lost forever. There are many theories about who was responsible. Was it the Romans, the Christian extremists, or was it simply wars that brought about its destruction? There is no definite answer. What is clear is that when the library was lost, a huge part of our past history was also lost. Just imagine, if it hadn't been destroyed, we might have long known the secrets of ancient maps, true knowledge of astronomy, and the history of civilizations that came before us. The loss of the Great Library of Alexandria is one of the biggest reasons why the greatest questions about our origins remain a mystery.